Wouldn't this story make a great movie?
After waking up from a near-death experience that left him in a coma for 3 days, a 50-year-old man realizes that he's lost 30 years' worth of memories. Will he remember his wife and their life together? Will he find the courage to share about his journey to heaven? Or will he deny her and avoid the reason God sent him back?
This pitch episode is the true life story of Douglas Knake.
This is the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast, helping filmmakers who share a Christian worldview stay in touch, informed, and inspired. Quiet on set. Rolling. Today's host is Jaclyn Witt.
Hello, welcome to the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast. I'm Jaclyn, and today I have a special guest with me, Douglas Knake, and he has a very unique experience to share with everyone. A few years back, you were on vacation in Los Cabos.
Yes.
What happened when you returned home?
So when I returned home, I started coming down with flu-like symptoms. I started getting sick on a Wednesday, went through all my appointments. I even went and worked out at the Y, came home and I told my wife, hey, I don't feel good. I'm just going to go to bed. So I slept all night Wednesday, got up the next morning, and I explained to her I was still sick. And so I stayed home all day Thursday. And I could tell I was getting worse as the day went on, but I didn't do anything about it. So Thursday night, about 11:30, I decided to get up out of bed and go take a shower. And in doing that, I'm having troubles negotiating things, trying to get there. I mean, I'm so delirious at this point. I even went into the shower with my clothes on.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm like having troubles functioning. You know, it's like everything's not making sense to me. So I go to get out of the shower and I hit the floor like a ton of bricks. And I managed to pull myself up on the vanity and I'm looking in the mirror and there's all this blood running down the side of my face. That thud on the floor alerted my wife and my youngest son. But during the time before they found me, I looked in the mirror, saw that blood, and I just remember saying in slow motion, oh, wow. And it's like that sensation that you get when they put you under anesthesia. You're like warping out.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I remember is saying, oh, wow.
Did you think that you might die?
No, I had no idea what was going on.
Interesting.
So Nikki calls 911, EMTs show up, they get me to the hospital, and they ask my wife, have you guys been out of the country? So things change rapidly when you tell them that. You're treated, you're quarantined, everybody's like, masked up and suited up. It's instant spinal tap at that point. And they draw your fluid. If it's cloudy, then they run a strand check because they need to know which form of meningitis you have. I had meningococcal meningitis, which is the worst one you can get. And the timeline on this stuff is there's a 10-day incubation period. When that's done, you have 24 hours to get antibiotics in you. And most people are dead in 24 hours.
And how long was it for you at that point?
I had gone 36 hours.
Okay, so you already beat a few odds.
Yes. And I think that has to do with God showing that he's God.
Right.
Because I should not be alive. I mean, there is no question in my mind that I should not be alive.
Okay, so then what happened next? Like you said, the last thing you remembered was when you blacked out in the bathroom.
So I'm in a coma for 3 days. Okay. I'm 50 years old at the time. This was October of 2006. So during this time frame, because of the condition that I came in at, which is unconscious, non-responsive, and septic, they have very little data on people who survive in that condition. They were basically preparing my wife that I was not going to make it.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine all the thoughts and the, I don't know what you want to call it, the heartache, the pressure, what the family was going through at this point. So on the third day, I'm waking up and I can hear people's voices in the room and they're talking, and the neurologist was in there and they told everybody to be quiet. She said, I need to ask you some questions. And, you have to understand, I looked like a stroke victim. The whole right side of my body was sagging. There was no movement. My right arm shook uncontrollably. I lost my hearing in my right ear. I lost the senses in my body to be able to tell what's hot and cold, how to walk, how to run. My memory had gotten erased to where I was 20 years old again. So the neurologist asked me if I knew my name. I told her my name. She said, "What year is it?" I said, "It's 1969. And people who know me know I have a bit of a sense of humor.
Right.
But I wasn't laughing. They were looking at me like, okay. So, she asked me, "Who's president?" And I said, "Nixon's president." And so friends of ours in the room were Mark and Colleen. And Mark looks like my older brother. So I said to him, "Mike," I said, "what are you doing here? I see you're still dating your girlfriend, Candy." That was his girlfriend back in 1969. So right then and there, everybody's kind of like, the flags are up.
Yeah, wondering, wait, is he joking? Right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
They could tell at that point that I was not joking.
Yeah, something else is happening.
So then my daughter walks into the room and she hands me a CD. And I said, "What's that?" And she tells me, "It's a CD, Dad. It plays music." And I said, "No, hon, they're black and about this big around."
Right.
So, vinyl records. And so she said, "Well, your favorite band's on there." So I'm thinking like Rolling Stones or Boston or, something of that nature. And she said, "No, it's Dave Matthews." And I said, "I don't even know who that is."
Right.
And so then the neurologist asked me, "Do you know this lady sitting next to the bed?" And I'm already shaking my head. "No, I don't know who this lady is." She tells me just to come up with a name. So I called her April, and my wife's name is Diane. The first thing my wife says to me is, "Who's April?" And I said, "Well, she told me to come up with a name." And I said, "Look," I said, "you're a beautiful lady, but I have no clue who you are." And I mean, it was just like instant tears just rolling down her face and just sobbing at that point.
So you didn't recognize your wife, but you did recognize your daughter.
Yes.
And did you recognize her as your daughter?
Yes. That was what was so weird. That's what totally blew people away. And I also recognized my mother-in-law.
Interesting.
And yes. So it's like your mind picks sections.
Yeah.
One thing I wrote in the book was I think the reason I remembered my mother-in-law is because they're amazing cooks.
Oh, okay. You love food.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Especially Mom's shrimp fettuccine.
Okay.
It's to die for.
I bet. Okay. So after you've gone through all of this trauma and you've woken up and you don't remember your wife, you have no memory of her. You do remember your daughter, but you don't have any other memories really from the time you were 20 years old till you were 50 at the time.
Correct.
That's 30 years worth of memories. A lot has changed in the world in 30 years. When you went back home, did you start to remember things?
That is like a huge story. One of the pivotal moments that showed some signs of regaining my memory is when about 2 months of being at home, and she had already taught me 101 computers, and my short-term memory loss is so bad at that time that she would have to keep teaching me every time she sat down with me. But I got to the point where she was showing me family photos, and I started recognizing that this lady who was just taking care of me was in every one of those photos. And I was sitting there, and the next thing I know, I recognized who she was. And I mean, the flood of emotions that hit me was so overwhelming that I was like in shock. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been arguing with this lady that she's not my wife for the longest time. So at this point, I'm still not able to walk. I'm having to hold on to furniture and the walls and what have you to make it out to the kitchen. And I told her, "I know who you are now." And I told her, I said, "You're my wife." And it was like this moment in time where you just know you connected. And she puts her hands on my face and tells me we're going to get through this. I mean, she's like laughing, but crying and just a whole gamut of emotion right there. But I'm still in this state. I have no idea what present day is. I don't even know who I am.
During the time that you were in a coma, do you have any memory of anything happening?
Yes, very much so. And I was trying to run from this. I was trying not to acknowledge that this happened. And I went for the longest time without saying anything to anybody because for fear of them thinking I was like nuts, that I was crazy. But God kept pursuing me and kept telling me, we had a conversation and you need to acknowledge it. So I was sitting on the couch one day with my wife and I told her, I need to tell you something. Something happened to me. I explained to her that when I was in the coma, that I had woke up into the sea of pitch blackness. I mean, it's like a black you've never experienced or seen or, just like hanging around like I was an observer. And the next thing I'm seeing is like something moving off in the distance. And the next thing I know, it's coming at me. I mean, it's getting closer, and the closer it gets, the bigger it gets. And the noises coming from these things was just incredible. I mean, they're hissing and screaming, and then all of a sudden you can see flames coming off their body. And at this point, I'm terrified. I am absolutely scared like I've never been scared before. And I felt like I had no way out of that situation. And then all of a sudden, God said to me, do not be afraid, I'm with you. As soon as he said that, it got absolutely beautiful, like the brightness of everything. And then the foundations of heaven showed up. I mean, it was just absolutely massive. And I was like in awe. I mean, it was just like unbelievable. And the neat thing about it is when God said, do not be afraid, I knew exactly who it was. My soul knew exactly who that was and what was going on. So the next thing I know, I'm going down through the streets of heaven. It's super fast, like so fast. And then the next thing I know, I'm sitting in a grassy knoll. And the grass is fairly tall and you could like see the mist going through the grass. And all of a sudden, God says my name. He said, Doug. And I mean, I really didn't know what to do at that point. You're kind of like in shock and you're bewildered because of everything that's going on. And he says, do you realize all the choices that you make in life not only affect you, but everybody around you? And then all of a sudden this pond just appears. And I mean, you could hear the water moving and the mist across the top of the water. And he drops a pebble. And he says, you see those ripples? He said, those ripples are your choices. And they just keep going. They keep affecting everybody around you. And he says, you need to be careful what your choices are. I'm sending you back. And I mean, I was like in shock that he was going to send me back. And I pleaded with him. This place is just absolutely amazing. I have never felt such peace and love in all my life. And I said, I don't want to go back. And the next thing he says to me, he says, I've got something for you to do. I'm sending you back. And that's when I woke up in the hospital bed and I could hear the voices and I could hear people talking before I woke up. And, then it was just like reality hits me. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. What is the name of your book?
It's called Being 20 Again at 50.
All right. And where can people find it?
They can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Zulon Press is the other one.
Okay. And what's the best way for people to get a hold of you if any producers or writers hearing this story today decide that they want to get in contact with you?
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. My email address is doug@Kitchens and Beyond. It's Kitchens with an S, A-N, beyond.com.
Okay. And we'll have that contact information available as well if people need to contact us directly to get in contact with you. We'll have your links in the show notes. And so for those of you listening that have thought this is an amazing story, because it is, you're welcome to buy the book. And if you're thinking you want to bring it to life on the screen, you know who to call. All right. Thanks for sharing your story today with us, Doug. It was really great to get to know you and hear about all of this. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do you have a script or story you want to pitch? Do you have a film or event that you'd like to promote? A theatrical release? A movie launching on streaming services? An upcoming festival or conference? we can help you create a pitch and promote episode at a reasonable rate. Contact us for more information. Our email address is in the show notes.
That's a wrap.